right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Red Couch Podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Avery.
And she's joining us from a top secret location calling in. How are you doing, Avery?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm missing that you're not here, but I'm assuming it will be fine. Joining us today is a very, very special guest. Aliyah Beckles-Gaines is a lifelong Penetanguishene resident who has been attending York University in Toronto for both a degree in dance and a Bachelor of Arts specialized honors in kinesiology. That's a mouthful. She has always been passionate about the arts, having been in several musical productions at both St. T's High School, St. Teresa's, and at the MCC with Georgian Bay Musical Theatre Company. Aliyah has always had a passion for sharing her life stories and has now begun documenting them in order to share them with more than just friends and family. Aliyah, thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad you guys asked me here.
Oh, we're happy to have you. How's life been with quarantine? It's been March, right? It's been months since I've seen you.
Well, back in March, I switched to online school and had some online exams. It wasn't terrible, but now we're back into it, and they're not fun, to say the least. But it's my last school year, so at least I don't have to worry about it too much longer.
Nice.
How are you holding up?
I'm good. I thankfully have a nice backyard and dogs to play with, so they keep me active. Only now am I starting to get back into an actual workout routine, but that's been interesting. Oh. But definitely better than I thought I would be.
That's good. That's good to hear. And yeah, I'm sure it's like a global, concern of like trying to figure out what to do and what's gonna happen. But you have been very busy because you are coming out with a literature project.
Yeah. So it started actually like with everything that's going on in terms of Black Lives Matter and whatnot. I started thinking about my own experiences growing up in a predominantly white town and how they've affected me in different ways. I mean, I would say I'm very fortunate to be resilient. However, there's still lots of ways that it's affected me. So in about June, I spoke at the Black Lives Matter march here in Midland. Mm-hmm. And just before that, I had already been thinking about getting together my own stories, but the march made me think about gathering other people's stories as well. So being at the march, I was able to get in touch with some other people, and it went from about 15 people to 4 of us. But I'm very glad to say that there's 4 really good stories that are being put together into this book, and getting to see that I wasn't alone in my experiences was very, very exciting. Because for a long time, like being a BIPOC youth, it's hard. You think you're completely alone, having predominantly white friends, and not to fault them at all, but they just don't understand. Mm-hmm. It's not the same. So being able to see these other BIPOC women have the same stories that I do, or very similar, has been great. And seeing that we've all been successful in spite of these stories is even better.
Yeah, it's that story. It's seeing that like they're not letting the challenges and those things that they're facing get in the way of what they want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. So do you have like an official title for the book yet?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yeah, so I do. So it's called We Are Here, and the subtitle is Stories from Southern Georgian Bay, BIPOC Women with an X in there. So yeah, so that's We Are Here was the thing that popped in my head immediately. Mm-hmm. Because actually during the Black Lives Matter march, the town of Midland had posted about where they were blocking off places. And so many people were commenting saying, why do we even need this here? Why is this important here? And I think it's important for us to shout, we are here.
Yeah.
We're here. We've been here. This is not new. Mm-hmm. We live here. So many times I feel like people in this area think that we don't exist because they don't see us all the time. Mm-hmm. you don't really see Indigenous youth all the time. You don't see Black youth all the time. So I think we're visiting. I'm not visiting. I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah.
But to see so many of these adults saying, this is unnecessary, why is this happening? Because people like that don't live here. It's just a resounding, we are here. Like,
Yeah.
and actually, it's funny. When I think about it, it reminds me of Horton Hears a Who, where part of it is them shouting from the dust speck, we are here, we are here, we are here. And that's when they finally believe that there's something there.
Yeah.
So I think the louder we shout, the more people will actually listen.
And the more they become aware that there are these people with their own lives and like the struggles that they're facing too.
Exactly.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember I attended that march as well, and seeing that the town of Midland had blocked off roads, that was, to me, I was like, wow, they're really, like, it's gone from just a couple of youth in their town organized to now being like the town's involved and wanting to help make it as safe and everything as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good. Like, I was really happy with the turnout. I was
Me too.
really shocked.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
When we were marching, I was at kind of the front of the pack, and I turned around at one point and I didn't stop seeing people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was amazing. I really didn't expect that.
Yeah, especially by young when we.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Nice. So, the process
Mm-hmm.
for writing this book. You said you had so you found the contributors through the Black Lives March
Mm-hmm.
movement. What's the process been like with them? Communicating with them, collaborating, making sure all the stories are getting sent in.
So I'm a very organized person. From the beginning, I had a writing and an editing schedule, so I'm editing all of these stories too. I'm having someone else edit mine because I'm terrible at self-editing. So I had a schedule. We started in August, so everyone has 3 weeks to write a certain amount of words, and then I have a week to edit. So that's what we're doing. We're still on top of that, which is good. So we're moving pretty quickly and towards the end of writing, which is great. So we're almost done, which is amazing.
Nice.
But it's easy to manage having only like 4 people.
Yeah.
Rather than having like a bunch of people.
That's true.
So that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing all the editing and the organizing. So it's an email chain. That was the easiest way to do it.
And then now, so with the editing and after all that process is done, do you have plans on publishing? It out?
So I'll be self-publishing because it's very hard and expensive to publish through a publishing house, especially when I don't know how many copies are ever going to be needed or wanted.
It's true.
So with self-publishing, I can at least dictate how many, at what time, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully in December during my Christmas break, I'll be editing that all together. So I actually, another important point, I found a Black female artist in Toronto, and she's going to do our book cover.
Nice.
Yeah, so part of the fundraising money from that goes there because that was expensive. But I thought it was really important to have it look very professional and not like I just kind of slapped it together. So
it's not like the Microsoft Word
no
comic art
exactly. No, I wanted it to look as professional as possible because it is geared towards people in this area, but if people beyond want to read it, I don't want them to be like, oh, this was someone's like little school project, because it's not.
And then have you thought about how you're going to distribute it? So like obviously you're going to publish it, so is it going to be like paper or like a paperback kind of like physical book, or like
so it's like the size of like a regular novel. So it's a paperback. So actually I've already talked with Georgian Bay Books here in town, so they're willing to sell it for me, which is great. And then I'm going to donate a couple copies, so there'll be a couple of copies donated to St. T's, a couple copies donated to GBDSS, and a couple of copies donated here. So
awesome.
So they're available for students who can't afford to buy it. Not that it's going to be expensive at all, but if you don't want to buy the book, then it's available for you to take out.
Nice. So you said that one of the stories in this in your book, We Are Here, is your own story. Do you mind sharing some of those like little stories about our wonderful local town?
Oh goodness. Okay. What age do you want to hear from?
Let's go whatever one you feel like sharing, because I'm sure no matter what age it is, they're equally as important, all those experiences, right?
Okay. Well, so there is one. So I'm an avid reader. I love reading. I've always loved reading my whole life. I have my own like little library. I even bought myself a stamp recently to say from the library of Aliyah.
Well, I mean, you are writing a book, so it kind of makes sense.
But so this was, so I'm 25 now. This was when I was like 21. I had just moved back home for a while, and I wanted to update my library card. I've been like a member of the Penetanguishene Library since I was 8 years old when I was able to get a library card. So literally, like, I had my 8-year-old library card. So I wanted a new one because I could take out books online. Well, my mom and I went to the library so I could get this new card. And I was talking to the woman at the front desk. And I just told her, I said, oh, like, I need a new library card. Like, mine's old. And she goes, oh, have you ever been here before? And I said, yes, I've been coming here since junior kindergarten because I went to school here. I just need to update my library card. And she kind of looked at me very confused. And then she's like, okay, well, like, what's your address? How long have you lived there? It's like, I've lived there for 10 years. This is my address. And then she proceeded to give me pamphlets for the library saying, oh, like, I don't know if you've known this about the library, blah, blah, blah. And at first I thought it was helpful. And then she asked me if I wanted a tour of the library. And I said to her, no, I've been coming here since I was in junior kindergarten. The library has not changed. I do know that. And she still couldn't wrap her head around the fact that I have lived here, been coming here since I was small, used to come there and study, do work, check out books, but I just hadn't been there in a couple years. And her desk mate kind of kept looking at her confused why she wasn't understanding that I'm here. I've lived here. I'm just trying to update my library card. And then unfortunately my library card didn't even work the way I wanted it to. But because I didn't want to go through that again, I just didn't go back.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to use my own library because of that.
And and that's really what's confusing. Is like you kind of you've explained you've gone through a process of like, I've lived here for this year, and yet it still wasn't clicking in. And like, do those kind of reactions of when it's still not clicking in their head, does that kind of how does that make you feel about them? Like,
I mean, when I was younger, they used to make me really upset.
Yeah.
Like, I used to not understand how someone couldn't understand that I'm from here. But now they just make me angry. Because at a certain point, when another adult, is not comprehending, it's just aggravating. Because why don't you believe me? Another person telling you to your face, I'm not a child. Why don't you believe me? It makes me feel like I'm lying, and I don't like when people think I'm lying. So it makes me really angry.
Yeah. And that was the like, when you were telling your story, I noticed too, is that like, even like you said, like the desk mate was kind of confused as to why, and you even mentioned how like you thought it was hospital at first, because it like, even with the way you were saying it, it's like, oh, like she is like she's giving pamphlets because maybe there's new programs or events, but like you said, when she mentioned tour, it's like, oh no, we're still back on that game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about like that stuff happened to you. Like, I wish I could speak on my stuff, but I actually am not from Midland, so I moved to Midland. So, but like, how, like, I don't know, like I know, I'm sure Avery and I would like, and the rest of the listeners would want to know, like, how can we as individuals, and even as a bigger picture as a community, what can we do to help, reduce the amount of times these little microaggressions and many forms of like racism and stuff occur?
That's a big question.
It's a deep question, right?
I mean, I guess, so part of the reason why I'm doing this literature project is because I feel like there's not any resources here to talk about the BIPOC youth here, or the BIPOC adults here. That doesn't exist. There's nowhere for us to be that feels like, oh, people aren't going to be like, oh, look at that. Like, I don't feel comfortable in that way. But at the same time, I don't feel like it's my responsibility to educate everyone because I'm only one person. And I can only speak to my experiences or the experiences people have talked to me about. But I think, like, a good thing was having the Black Lives Matter march. I think that was really wonderful for people to actually see something's happening here. But I think the onus is absolutely on the health hubs here, the, like, cultural center, the town, because they can educate people and put things out there, but they're not, and they're not asking how to either. And then also, like, it's just, with the age of the internet, it is very hard to be like, oh, like, just Google it, because that's available, right? Of course, there's, like, a whole large percentage of the population here that's significantly older, and they don't know how to do that. So that's why it would be nice to have more tangible resources. But, like, even just going to the library, like, I can't find things by BIPOC authors. That's, like, buried in there if it even exists. So even, like, having those on display at a constant, not just Black History Month or Indigenous Peoples Month, like, that's not enough. A month is not enough. A week is not enough. It needs to be all the time. Because unfortunately, the only narratives we're fed are white narratives, or seeing white history. It needs to, like, there's such, I can't find the words. It's like, it's such a big thing, but it could start so small, but it doesn't feel like anyone wants to put in the effort to start it. And I don't think the onus needs to be on BIPOC people to start these movements.
No. Because I think that's what you mean. Is like it's so, a big part of it is educating yourself on these topics, on for example Juneteenth. I found out what that was this year,
But me too,
right?
Like, and that's the thing. It's like growing up in a predominantly white town. I don't even know my own history. I don't know anything.
And I think it's like everything you said, I think kind of attributes to that, because like you said, like the libraries, it'd be cool if they had like a section for not necessarily like a Black and Indigenous authors, right?
Absolutely.
Like BIPOC authors, sorry. And because then like a lot of the novels, if it is by a white author, it's written from a white perspective, whereas if it's written by a BIPOC author, it's their experiences, and it's like that they're kind of telling on the page.
Even for fiction, like, it doesn't have to be just nonfiction, but like the first fiction book that I read by a Black author, my mother had to give it to me. And I was young and I didn't understand the gravity of it until now, when like it's hard to find. It's so hard to find. It's even hard to find it like Indigo. Like, they have like a section now, but it's like it took all of this marching and all the stuff happening in the States and stuff that's happening here for people to be like, oh my goodness, it's happening. It's been happening. It never stopped happening.
Exactly. And it's your point about, like, I just keep, like, because I remember during the whole Black Lives Matter movement and during that the march, and it's still happening now. I'm not to say that's not right. I would always just say, if you can't think of what to do right now or how to help educate yourself, because that's the best. Like, that's, at least from as someone who isn't I am a person of color, but like I'm not Black or Indigenous, so like it's not I don't experience the same as y'all do, right? But it's important to learn and to like educate and to, so that you can at least understand why they're doing that move, and why they're acting like, and doing these actions. And another thing is too, is like, not only is it important to educate, but I feel like it's different when someone teaches you versus you going out there to learn. And I think that's like with the whole thing of, you can't expect the BIPOC people to be the ones to be like always teaching you, because that's not their job.
No.
Like, it's not, right?
At the end of the day, it becomes very tiresome.
Yeah.
And like how I do things is very passively, because it takes so much energy for me to have to be like educating people. So I post things on my story, I try and share resources, but when everything started happening, I got reached out to by a lot of people that were not my friends and asking how they can help, what they should read. I answered 2 people. I didn't answer the other 15 because it's not my responsibility to educate you when you could go find it yourself. It's not my responsibility to put my life on hold to make you feel better about yourself. It's just not. It's right now my responsibility is to take care of myself and to make sure that other people who look like me are also okay.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
So thinking about like what you said about like your library card, and you said like you stopped going for a few years and they treated you like, have you like avoided like places because of like the microaggressions and the way people treat you?
Absolutely, I have. Yeah. There's like lots of places that I've quietly avoided over the years. I couldn't even list all of them. But like even I had a similar thing happen at Foodland in Penetang. When I was dating my first boyfriend, I was like 20, and he was white and blonde, and I am black. And it was during reading week, and the cashier goes to him, "How long are you home for?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm not from here. She's the one that's from here." He was from Mississauga, so he's really not from here. And she just kind of like gave me a weird look, but didn't ask me the same question. And like that made me feel super uncomfortable. So I didn't go to Foodland for like the rest of reading week, even though I needed stuff.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that are just ridiculous.
So what, with that in mind, and like what, like for example, our space here, you know, we wanna, you know, we promote, you know, being accepting of all race, religions, sexuality. What are some things that spaces like our the hub here and other spaces around in the community, what are some things they can do to kind of, you know, reduce those experiences and make BIPOC people feel comfortable in their spaces?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good
question. A lot of deep questions, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Oh my goodness. I mean, in order to answer that, I guess I have to think about how I felt while I was in high school and didn't have access to a vehicle and different places. And I guess I would say it would be, again, nice to be able to have like designated places where I can read what I want to read that's related to me. And also even just having like, I don't know, like a website that actually has links to resources or things. Because being a university student, like I know how to use a database.
Yeah.
I know how to do like proper scholarly research. So I can find everything I need. But the average person or high school student doesn't necessarily have those resources. So it'd be nice if there was like availability, because you have to pay for databases.
Yeah.
A high school student is not paying for a database. But there's so many scholarly articles that are not so boring or drab that actually tell you things.
Yeah.
And you get to learn things. Like there's so much of my own history that I didn't know until everything that's been happening recently. I didn't know anything. And it's not my mother's fault that she didn't teach me. It's like the onus is on the education system, because we're all here. Just because you're in a smaller town doesn't mean you shouldn't learn about it.
And it's true how like just I don't want to speak on behalf of the indigenous community, but like even the indigenous community, like they're such a big part of our area, especially like here in like in Midland Penetang area, right? Yet we haven't learned, like I don't even think it's part of the curriculum.
It's not.
Yeah.
I think only just recently they started teaching about residential schools.
Yeah.
And like those people are still alive. Like they're here. Like it's not like it's way in the past. It happened recently. And
that's what shocks me is like a lot of like movements like happened like not even like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's funny because the education system likes to frame it in the past, like, oh, this happened, but everything's fine now. Well, everything's not fine now. It's still, we're seeing still the effects from things way that we feel are far away, but they weren't, happening now. And it's catalyzing things that are happening now because things haven't changed. Like people had to march years and years ago, and we're marching for those same things still. Like, and the education system likes to pretend that, oh, that happened and it's good. Like, when I was in 6th grade, we learned about Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like one of the first times and the last time in my education system of elementary and high school where I actually learned about someone who looked like me. I was really excited about it. We read the book, it was great. Of course, I felt uncomfortable at the same time though because everyone kept looking at me.
Oh no.
Because I was the only black kid in the class. And now it was a different kind of uncomfortability than a lot of people experienced because I had known these kids since junior kindergarten. So it was like looks of pity. Oh. It wasn't looks of, oh, she's the only black kid. It was looks of, wow, I'm so sorry that you have to go through this, but that still made me really uncomfortable. And like I remember like feeling like anxious all the time every time we went in. But like I read the book and it was wonderful, only to find out now that it's a whitewashed narrative of Martin Luther King Jr. that we learned.
Oh, so it was like by like a white author? Or
no,
like...
in terms of, well, I'm learning now. A lot of people talk about how MLK Jr. was very peaceful, and that's why his protests did so much, which is like barely true, because obviously it hasn't done enough.
Yeah.
But the truth is, before he was assassinated, he changed his mind. He said, peaceful protest isn't doing anything, maybe we need to be louder. Mm-hmm. And then he died. Didn't learn that. Now I don't expect a 6th grader to learn that, but the fact that it was framed in a past context that, oh, Martin Luther King did this and now everything's great for black people in America and Canada. Well, it wasn't.
No.
It was a very small blip in history that sent a catalyst that kept going. However, that march did not make everything okay, and that's how it was framed.
Yeah, it's like they're almost saying it's like, yep, this happened and everything's solved. Like, no need to worry about it anymore. Don't even think about it. Like, yes. That's kind of like
exactly
what they're presenting us.
Exactly. So, and I mean, as a black youth, I was like, oh, okay, everything's fine now. Only to keep growing up and realize everything is not fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what you said about like growing up and not like learning about your own like history and your like people who are like you, like I'm not a person of color, I will never understand, but my whole like history class is people who look like me. Mm-hmm. So what would like learning about it and like learning about Black history, and not just for Black History Month, because like this school system feels like it's almost like they don't push it at all except Black History Month.
Oh yes. Yeah, like I mean, it's funny, and it's not even pushed during Black History Month. It's like optional. It's like, oh, we made a display. Choose to go see it. It shouldn't be a choice. It should be part of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And even if the start of it is just like, oh, this month we're going to read this, that's better than having the library have an optional display. Like, yeah.
Because how often people go to those displays unless they're interested, like genuinely interested?
You have to be genuinely interested, and the problem is the people who are genuinely interested are the people who are already allies and they're doing the work. But the people who aren't interested are the ones that we need to be grabbing because they're not understanding. So I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. So as you know, and I'm not sure if some of our listeners know, but the Hub here offers a variety of services for both mental health and addictions. And, so we offer like peer support, mental health therapy. Do you have any experiences or stories to share regarding mental health? Have gone through your own experiences with it?
Yeah, I've absolutely gone through my own battles with mental health. In high school, I had seasonal depression, and by the time I got to university, it was full-blown depression. Oh, no. And, I was in my third year of university, and I had to leave because everything was too overwhelming. I was way too depressed. I was very anxious. I hadn't been on medication or even gone to therapy at that point. And finding a therapist was hard.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hard, and I was very lucky to have financial benefits from my parents to be able to actually access therapy in the first place. Because trying to go through my school's therapy was impossible. It was a 3-week wait to even get to anyone. And then if you did, it was like barely an appointment, and then they just connected you with other resources. So when you're depressed and anxious, having to go through all those steps to get somewhere is awful. And it's really, I think a place like this is great because there's people there to help connect you to those steps so that you're not doing it by yourself.
Exactly. And I was just going to say is like here at the hub, you know, we like to promote that we're a one-stop shop, that where when you come to us, we will connect you to that service that you need right at the right time, at the right place, at that moment. And it's true, that's what research found, and that's why the hub exists, right? It's that youth, and you specifically, found that there are a bunch of barriers when it comes to trying to access these services when it shouldn't be like that.
Absolutely.
So you said that you went through so you dropped third year. Was that when you did what program were you at?
So I was in the dance program at that time. I was doing my Bachelor of Fine Arts in dance. So I completed my third year because I'm an anomaly. I never stop doing things. It actually helps with my depression to be busy. It doesn't help me to sit and do nothing. And I already knew that about myself. So I finished my third year. I didn't go back for my fourth year. I just did a couple of classes online, but I had fully switched into my kinesiology program at that point because I knew I needed a change, and I knew that would help my mental health. So I did it. And I'm fortunate enough to have that insight. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have that. I'm also fortunate enough to have a mother who's a social worker.
Yeah.
That helps too. So she can actually help guide me. But not even just that. I don't always listen to my mother like everyone else. But my therapist really helped me make that decision and know that it was a good decision and it was the right decision. But if I hadn't had a therapist or a mother who's a social worker, I don't know what would have happened. And I'm very fortunate and that I was able to connect with those things. But yeah, so I left, and when I came back, I was full-blown into kinesiology, and now I'm in my last year of it. So
well, look at that. Well, thank you for sharing your story with mental health. Not everyone's comfortable sharing, but I think it's just cool to see, and I'm hoping the listeners feel this way too, to see that even though someone has gone through struggles with mental health and all that they're able to connect to services and utilize those tools and all that to kind of because look at you now. You're writing a book. You're not only do you do dance, but you're in kinesiology, which is not an easy game, right? So, but
yes.
So thank you for sharing your story with us for that.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it so much.
Thank you again for having me. I'm really glad I was able to speak with you too.
Alrighty, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to the Red Couch Podcast. Be sure to tune in for our next episode, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.